Well, good afternoon, Yakima Downtown Rotary. Welcome. I hope you all survived Valentine's Day just 2 days ago. And today we had greeters Drew Harris and Dave Heinel. Thank them for their greeting this afternoon. And as I look out on the crowd, I see Dave Brown out there. And he just looks different. He looks different. He's so relaxed. He just recently retired. Have you actually retired yet, Dave? Tomorrow. All right. Well, we'll celebrate today. All right. We are going to start our meeting today with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would please stand. And on the screen, you're going to be led by Kate Loeb and her daughter, I understand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. You can remain standing if you would. We have the invocation. Russ Wilkinson.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. There are many stories of the origins of some of our customs we share on Valentine's Day. According to one medieval legend, an imprisoned Valentine actually sent the first Valentine greeting himself after he fell in love with a young girl, possibly his jailer's daughter, who visited him during his confinement. Before his death, it is alleged that he wrote her a letter signed "From Your Valentine," an expression that is still in use today. As we pray this morning, maybe you could remember for a moment some of those in your life that you really appreciate. Let's pray. Thank you, God, for creating this principle of love. The more we as people remember this principle, the more of your light will shine into the darkest areas of our world. Thank you for our Rotary members serving here in Yakima and around the world. Please give an extra dose of your blessing to those victims of the recent tragic earthquake in Syria and Turkey. Please also be with all the Rotary families and others serving these victims and families. In a world where there is so much darkness, thank you for the hope and the light you have given us. On this Valentine's week, we thank you for those special people in our lives who have brought us so much love and meaning. And now thank you for this amazing food, and especially for those serving us in this room today. Amen.
So that's the origin of Valentine's Day. I didn't know that. Okay. At this time, anyone who is a guest today, would you mind standing so we can acknowledge you here at our meeting and thank you for attending? We have a couple. And I just want to tell you, if you have an interest in becoming a Rotary member, talk to a Rotarian next to you, or we also have information, I think, out in front by our badge box. So you're welcome to ask us any questions you'd like. I know we've all observed the destruction of an earthquake in Turkey and part of Syria, and I'm sure many of us have thought, well, how can we help? What can we do? And I'm going to share just one opportunity. There's an operation called Shelter Box USA, and they provide housing in the form of a tent. They have shelter kits that have heavy-duty tarps, tools, building materials to repair a home, lights, solar-powered lights for lighting, and for a certain amount, they can provide a full shelter box filled with a family tent, essential supplies, blankets, solar lights, and kitchen set, and more. So this is Shelter Box is a partner of Rotary International, and you could go online. I think it's Shelter Box, or just search for Shelter Box. And if you're so inclined, there's an opportunity to contribute and help out. Next we have Anthony, it says here, Anthony A.P. Peterson, our Black History Member Spotlight for today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, President Rick, fellow Rotarians, guests. My story is going to be fairly quick, but I hope impactful. So when talking to Mr. Silvers, he said many things and trying to coach me for this moment, but he wanted me to talk about how I got here to Yakima and why I stayed to Yakima. My story has been rooted in the principles of service aligned with our mission, service above self. So my mother was from Parkland, Washington, on the west side of the state, just right near Tacoma. She was adopted. Her and my uncle and aunt were adopted. And my grandmother got in a car accident when they were three. So she was raised on a farm with her adoptive parents. So she knew a lot about hard work, anybody who ever worked on a farm. So she instilled that into me, my brother, and my sister, who we all have different dads. So that was my mother's upbringing. My father's upbringing is something I don't know about just yet because I haven't met him. However, thanks to technology and ancestry, I found him. So we're in the process of trying to figure that relationship out. But my father, he was in the military. He's from New York. And when he was at the Joint Air Force and Army base, back then they're separate. There was McCord, and then there was the other Fort Lewis base back then. That's where he met my mother, and they were together for some time, and then they separated. So their whole discipline, I think, that has been poured in me was service and hard work. So my mom, being a single parent, she did not graduate high school initially, but she went back and got her GED, and she spent her life serving others as a certified nurse's assistant, which CNAs are highly underpaid and heavily underworked, by the way. So if you see a CNA, give them a lot of credit because they put up with a lot of stuff we wouldn't put up with. So, but she never complained, did what she had to do, and she made sure that as a single mother, me and my sister and my brother were taken care of. And through her service to others and hard work, she put us in programs that were able to take care of us and pour into us, like daycare, but even more than daycare, we participated in the Boys and Girls Club, which was heavily impactful for kids like me on the west side and other urban communities. So I grew up in the Boys and Girls Club. They were my second parents and did all types of activities. Was able to be exposed to first college visit. I was able to do my senior project through the Boys and Girls Club and pay back to my community through the Boys and Girls Club as a volunteer. And then when I went to college at Eastern Washington, I came back during the summer and was able to work for the Boys and Girls Club. And again, some of the tenets within that club atmosphere, Boys and Girls Club atmosphere, is all about service. So the Boys and Girls Club helped raise me, helped get me to college, along with my mom and the rest of the community that I was involved in at the time. Growing up, I went to Eastern Washington University, and I was a walk-on football player. I played strong safety in high school. Then I got to college. I was far too short. So they moved me to corner, but I was far too slow. But I could hit somebody, though. I was like a midget Cam Chancellor, if you will. But in college is a different environment because the structure that I had through some systems of support, I didn't really have at Eastern Washington, and I got kicked out of school. I got in a fight my freshman year. I got kicked off the football team, and then I got kicked out of I got kicked out of school first, and then I ended up not being able to get back on the football team once I got re-enrolled. So I ended up pledging a fraternity and trying to transition within the university. It wasn't happening, so I moved back to Tacoma. While in Tacoma, again, my mom, she accepted me like, hey, we're going to replan, refocus, but you can't be here much longer. So she gave me 3 months to figure it out. So I worked and I volunteered back at the Boys and Girls Club and got the motivation and courage to figure out what I was going to do next. So I ended up transferring to Central Washington University, where my sister was going to school at the time. And I met Drew during that period. And I played 1 year of football, but these knees gave out, so I ended up just playing a year, and I decided to be a student and figure that out for the first time in my life. But the service and hard work never left me. I was able to transition some of that football energy into the work that I now do as far as workforce development, training, and community service work through my job. So, looking back at where I was and my family's impact in my life, service and hard work really has been the two pillars that help sustain me. And as I close, I just want to thank my mom, who now lives with me. I moved her in. She was having some health issues, and she still makes sure that I'm putting in the service and putting in the hard work, no matter what. CEO or not, she's making sure that things get done. So, I think, most of my success, again, to my mother, my father for not being there, and allowing me to really benefit from the community support. And now as, a CEO of a workforce development training organization that has support services, it means a lot to be able to pay back to the community and get paid for it pretty good. So thank you with that, President Rick. That's my story. Have a good one.
Hey, Anthony, is this what you were going to read right here? Should I look? Yeah, that was a great story. Thank you for sharing. Service above self through Rotary and service above self at home. Very good. We have Dana Eliason, who is going to talk to us about fireside scholarship dinners, which are coming up, and we're going to find out when.
Thank you, President Rick and fellow Rotarians. Well, it is that time of year again, springtime. Woo! Daylight savings time is March 12th. It's coming up. Anyway, yes, the Fireside Fellowship / Scholarship Dinners. The purpose of these dinners is to raise money, actually, for our educational scholarships here at Rotary. And we have picked the dates of April 19th through May 3rd. That's a Wednesday to Wednesday, a 2-week period. And last year we had 20 fireside dinners that were hosted with about 69 Rotarians attending. This year our goal is much greater than that. We're looking at hosting a minimum of 100 Rotarians this year. So I'd like to see a show of hands of everyone that's attended a fireside dinner. Okay, now look around and see that those that aren't raising their hands, and that means that you have to invite that person to one of these fireside dinners, okay? Everybody got that? So anyway, we're hoping we can accomplish that with over 100 guests. Each host, again, would like to encourage you to invite a new member. And one of the things that we are going to encourage you to do this year is to do a BYOB. It's not what you think, though. Actually, it's bring your own bunch. So if you want to sign up to host a party, gather your friends, gather your guests, and get them all to your house, but also include that new member as well. So, and if you just simply want to sign up to host, we will supply you with those names. And members with children, I think Brad Hansen and Jordan Matson have done it in the past. They do a family-friendly event, and we would encourage anyone that wants to do that to put some fun together and bring in the whole crowd of husband, wife, kids, you know, new Rotarians. So with that said, you'll be hearing more from us. Vice Chair Sony Alexander and Vice Chair Ryan Anderson will be contacting you. Other committee members will be contacting you. But in the meantime, fill these sheets out on your tables, get your date reserved now, and stay tuned. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks for leading it, and we'll look forward to participating in it. But right now, we're going to stay on this theme of fireside dinners. Sorry, Brad was looking at me like, Sergeant of Arms coming up? Not yet. Well, we had everybody raise their hand who has been to a fireside event. So I'm going to ask those who haven't to raise their hands, if they're willing to do so. Okay, there are a few. Oh, come on, I saw Russ. Come on, you got to put your hand up. Well, what I'd like us to do, take a few minutes. I think we have some people who have attended and others who haven't. And I'd like you to think back to when you attended, what you enjoyed about it. Don't say anything about what you didn't like. That's not fair. So just what you enjoyed about it, and talk to someone who hasn't attended at your table about why you attend and what you gain from it. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to have tabletop discussions about this subject, and then we'll check in with you. Fire away. I can hear the... Let's see. The conversations are beginning. Okay.
Well, I was thinking, like, is there a
Yeah, there was. There is. Yeah, I saw that one.
I was thinking that this morning.
Okay. And then, so moving that, the one with Jennifer Reeser, that, or get a different one of the Greenway Park. So we were thinking putting just pictures down below. But I couldn't figure out, like, how to edit them to make them smaller, or...
You can double click on them and change the size and get it. Or I could just, you can send them to me and I'll just send them. Right now there are two ballerinas. So I went and turned those ones up. They are two separate. We can put the ballerina up wherever you want to do it. Yeah, I think so.
I hope you are having some fun and interesting conversations. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to ask if there are some tables that have a story they'd like to tell about their time at a fellowship, fireside, scholarship dinner. And by the way, does everybody know that the scholarship part of that means that the funds that are raised through this go to support our scholarship programs. So it is it's an integral part of our Rotary experience to support that. So anybody have a story or anything they'd like to say? Okay, Mike.
Yeah, got voluntold on this one. This is what I get for sharing too much at the table. I was a member of the club. Brad, you guys did the family deal at Jordan's Place. I must have been a member for maybe 6 months. Surprise, surprise, this story revolves around Jack. Jack was maybe 5-6 months old and decided to have a massive blowout diarrhea at my very first fireside meal ever. Unbeknownst to the Matsons and the Hansen clan there, we snuck him out. We went into the bathroom, kind of cleaned him up, and then I found out months later from Brad, he's like, I was wondering why you guys left so quickly. We were having a good time, and then all of a sudden it was just like, hey, we're gone. See you guys.
It's at Jordan's house, yeah.
Yeah, at Jordan's house, and suddenly we just weren't there. And, well, yeah, that's what you get when you bring a 5-month-old to the dinner, so word of caution for you.
But you're welcome to come back now, right? Lorna? John Adkison. Turn on the mic.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yep. I guess my plea would be that everyone in this room go to a dinner. I mean, it's crazy not to go to a fireside dinner. It's an opportunity to talk with someone, to make friends with someone. It's a fun time. It's not okay to not go.
That's a past president speaking. Not okay to not go. All right. What? You paid him to say it. Sony. Alexander.
I told them the story about my very first dinner when I was only in the club about 3 weeks, and I about hyperventilated, had to pull over the side of the road. So, I was so afraid. And I went to Doug and Darlene's house, and it was wonderful, and the people were gracious. And as soon as I was through the door, all the nerves went away. So please get to know everybody by joining in these. But my funny story is about John Atkinson's. Well, the people who, the committee, like Dana and I, they had told me to go to Atkinson's house at 6 o'clock. And I'm really nervous still. I go knock on the door, and John's wife answers the door, and she goes, oh, well, hello. Come on in. Can I get you some wine? And I sat all by myself in this little living room looking through some books, and she goes, oh, can you excuse me because I got to go change my shirt? And I go, well, sure, that'd be fine. Well, then after about 45 minutes, other people started showing up. And the person had told me the wrong time, and I showed up for dinner an hour early. And she was the most gracious hostess. I did not realize that I was an hour early.
I don't think you can go wrong. You can't do anything wrong. Just attend, and everything will be just fine. So I encourage you all to go. Thanks for your stories. And I think right now we have Sergeant of Arms by Mr. Brad Hansen. So watch out. I set this up so the mic would just fall off the same.
Yeah, comic relief, right? Thanks, President Rick. Fellow Rotarians and guests, first of all, I'm going to back up to the last topic. Raise your hand if you have kids under 30 or are still feeling the child yourself. Okay, Carolyn, that's too many people. Jordan and I can't feed all those folks, so that doesn't work. He does that for a living. No, but seriously, if you do have kids, Jordan and I host every year. We've been doing it for 10 years. When we joined, we had these great dinners, and Jordan and I looked at each other in our 30s with 4-year-olds and said, our cost is like double. Let's just throw a party for a bunch of people who can bring their kids instead of paying babysitters, and it turned out great. So that's my shameless plug for signing up for our dinner once we figure out what day that is, Carolyn. I had to laugh. I was a little unprepared for today, spent the last couple of days, and then realized that someone picked me to talk on the day of Title IX. I found that hilarious. I have a lot of advantage. And so I was going to tell jokes today. I mean, I had a couple, like, you know, where does the majority of a hockey player's salary come from? The Tooth Fairy. For our president-elect Jim, like, why are tennis players so loud? They make a racket all the time. Like, I mean, I had some stuff. And then I was going to talk about pre-1972 versus post-1972 and gender equality and women, and I figured that was going to go really well, and my mother would shoot me when I see her this weekend because I would be talking about people of an age, and that wasn't cool. So I just started reading, and I was fascinated that, you know, I think a lot of us, and I myself, I think of Title IX as sports. I think about it as equality for women and men in sport. And that's not what I found. I mean, I did find that, you know, before 1972, 1 in 27 high school women played sports, and now it's 1 in 2.5. Wow. But the bigger thing was education and opportunities in our education system. Before 1972, 7% of law degrees and 9% of medical degrees were conferred to women. Now it's about half. 1 in 5 faculty members worked at universities, and please don't fact check me, Dr. Kaminsky or Christine Cody. I could be wrong, but I did some reading, and, you know, only 3% of university presidents were women before 1972. Now it's 43% of tenure track and full-time professors and 32% of college presidents. Still not quite there, but pretty incredible. There were no women in vocational and tech before 1972, virtually none, and now it's about 30%. And again, don't fact check me on that, please. But I was just floored. So that was my 1.5 minutes. I'm glad that I live in a country that is continuing to be progressive, and we continue to work towards equality for all. And so my equality for all part today is you're all paying $3, so put your money up. Thanks.
That was way too easy to just $3 each of us. Equality. We all get to pay the same. All right. Okay, thanks, Brad. Our speaker is going to be introduced today by Bruce Bacon.
President Rick, Rotarians, and guests, please welcome our speaker today, Karen Blair Troyanello. Karen grew up in Bellingham and matriculated to WSU, where she majored in journalism and ran on the track team. She qualified for nationals in track while at WSU and has been employed in the newspaper business since 1980. She's married to another employee at the Yakima Herald Republic, Craig, and has one son, Peter. I've known Karen for a long time, mainly through volunteering at track meets locally, and also she's an aunt to one of my son's good friends. Karen will be speaking today about Title IX, which changed how women are treated in sports, giving them equal funding to men's programs throughout the country. Karen was named plaintiff in a landmark class action lawsuit, Blair versus Washington State University, which helped change the landscape for all sports in the United States. Welcome, Karen.
Okay, who was talking about being short? When I went to nationals, it was actually at East Lansing, which is the site of the latest shooting, unless something's happened today. But in the airport, one of the sky caps or whatever they're called, you know, women were coming in all over the country, and he looked me up and down and he says, "There's some really tall women here." And I still have nightmares about nationals, but I did go. Anyway. And I'm also, okay, I'll just start here. I get nervous, but I'd like to thank Bruce for inviting me to speak to you today about the Title IX's 50-year legacy. However, I want to make some disclaimers right off the bat. I am not an expert on Title IX by any means, although WSU gave 5 of us plaques during its impressive the Power of Nine last year celebration. I'm not an expert on what has happened at WSU in the athletic program since I graduated in 1980, although I have toured the gleaming new co-ed training facilities, a huge step up even from the well-equipped, up-to-date men's varsity weight room of my era, and especially from the small, bare room with a solitary and somewhat rickety universal weight machine that we were allowed to use. And third, I did take the mandatory freshman public speaking class at WSU, but it was 47 years ago. Please bear with me. I'm here today because I was the named plaintiff in a successful class action gender equity lawsuit known as Blair versus Washington State University, which wasn't actually based on Title IX, but instead was argued on the basis of Washington State's Equal Rights Amendment. For years, I denied any connection with Title IX, but I've grown to better understand and appreciate the foundation it gave us as plaintiffs and as student athletes. Title IX is part of the Federal Educational Amendments Act, which was passed in 1972 when I was 14 and a freshman at Bellingham High School. One point that I like to, it always just makes me laugh. I was asked by a fellow WSU grad, makes me just blush, if I actually had written Title IX. I had to say no. I was 14 at the time. Anyway, this is what Title IX says. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. That same year, Representative Lois North proposed Washington State's Equal Rights Amendment, which provided that equality of rights and responsibilities could not be denied or taken away from anyone because of his or her sex. So while federal and state legislators were working hard to erase discrimination, some of them, I was busy signing up for the high school track team, as I found in middle school that running around in a circle a bit faster than other people was one of my skills. What I didn't know is that the school administrators were already working to comply with what was understood of Title IX schools. What that meant for me was that along with being encouraged in academics, I also had a great coach who helped me make it to state all 4 years. It also meant that when some other girl said, "Hey, we should run cross country with the boys," the coach had to let us do it, even though we weren't allowed to race at away meets. But I was a sprinter and a long jumper at that time, and not going to embarrass myself at cross-country meets out of town didn't really bother me that much. I finished my high school career with 1 state 5th place ribbon, solid times in the 220 and 440, and a 17'9" long jump mark. Good grades, and absolutely no expectations that those would get me anywhere. But I got one letter from a coach at a private college who said he had no money to offer, but would be glad to have me on the team. This is where my dad said, "Karen, do you know the difference between public and private schools?" I didn't. Anyway, that private tuition wasn't in my budget, but it did give me confidence that I could maybe compete at college. So off I went to Pullman, planning to study journalism and see what else would happen. My memory is shaky, but I think I found my way to track team tryouts from a notice on a gym bulletin board. I found myself in a great group of women from across the state and beyond who loved the sport and worked hard. In my first season, I managed enough good races that a Spokane sports writer dubbed me a gutsy freshman runner, and I quickly became known as Guts to my teammates. That same year, Coach Dot Doby called me to her office and offered me one of the first scholarships available for women at WSU, worth 1 semester of tuition and fees split between the 2 semesters for the following year. I was surprised and grateful. In my boxes, stuffed with mostly unsorted material about the lawsuit, I found a bill that showed as an undergrad state resident I owed $343 for a semester. My scholarship paid for $172 of that. Those days are long gone, let me tell you that. Getting a scholarship made me feel like I had a lot to live up to. So when they were looking for athletes to serve on an advisory committee, I volunteered. That's when I learned about the bigger picture and the ongoing work to get the university to comply with Title IX. In 1975, Pamela Jacklin, WSU's Affirmative Action Officer, had researched and written what has been described as a blistering report on the rampant sex discrimination in athletics at WSU. That started a chain of events that eventually led to the lawsuit. The first complaint about discrimination in WSU's athletic programs had been filed as early as 1975. Mel Jennings, a basketball player, and Amy Cox, who played field hockey and skied, had started asking why, with Title IX on the books, women's programs weren't getting a fair shake. When a 1978 deadline to comply with Title IX wasn't met, they filed a complaint with the Federal Office of Civil Rights, which eventually sent a team of investigators. In a Daily Evergreen article about the investigation from January 18, 1979, Jennings said she was filing the grievance because the women's teams could not stay competitive with others in their class because of the slim budget. The article also noted that out of the service and activities fees we all paid, $11 went to the men's athletics, while $1.25 went to women's athletics. As the months dragged on, it became apparent that effecting change would require stronger action. Fortunately, we had by this time teamed with the Northwest Women's Law Center of Seattle, which is now called Legal Voice, and we forged ahead. Here's a summary of the case from the Law Center. In October 1979, the Law Center filed a class action suit on behalf of women athletes and coaches at Washington State University, charging the school with sex discrimination in its intercollegiate athletics program under the ERA and RCW 4960, which was a law against, I suppose it still is a law against discrimination. After a lengthy trial, the court ruled that WSU had discriminated. However, in ordering WSU to divide its athletic budget more equitably, the court undercut the effectiveness on the remedy by ruling that the university did not have to include football in the budgetary pie. With a go-ahead from the 49 plaintiffs, the Law Center appealed on a number of issues, including the exclusion of football. On August 6, 1987, nearly 8 years after the suit was filed, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled in our favor. The court ruled that the trial court abused its discretion in excluding football in determining an equitable distribution of athletic participation opportunities, scholarships, and other funds. As a result of this decision, WSU received additional state funding to assist it in bringing gender equity to its athletic programs. By the time the ruling came out, I was in Yakima on my 4th newspaper job. We moved around a lot. When you're young, you just move around a lot. I got a settlement check for $369.85. $97.31 was just for interest. Thinking of the gas I'd used for traveling back and forth for depositions and for the trial held in Colfax, and later to Olympia for the Supreme Court session, I kept $100 and pooled the rest with another teammate who is here today, checking up on me because they, after all these years, they're like, "What is she saying at all these meetings?" And we sent it back to offer a small scholarship for track athletes. It's always been important for me that no one thought I was doing this for personal gain. So why were we doing it? Because let me tell you, it was a lot of work. The new facilities were built long after we graduated. For myself, I'd say we did it because we wanted future Cougar athletes to get a fair deal. When I wonder whether taking a stand for gender equity in athletics was worth it, given the many other important issues I might have worked on, I take heart in statistics from the National Women's Law Center. Among them, that minority female athletes get better grades than their non-athletic peers, that an increase in female sports participation leads to an increase in women's labor force participation later on, that 4 out of 5 executive businesswomen played sports growing up and credited lessons learned on the playing field to their success in business, and that there are significant health benefits for women who participate in sports. There's a wonderful book, so wonderful I sure wish I had written it, that also supports my belief that we did the right thing. Karen Blumenthal wrote, "Let Me Play, the story of Title IX, the law that changed the future of girls in America." She wrote it for younger readers But it is such a great explanation of how it all happened that I recommend it to anyone who's interested in the subject. Actually, I told a WSU organizer about the book as we were preparing for the Power of Nine celebration last year, and they ended up giving out hundreds of copies to youngsters attending the basketball game. That's where they had the celebration. In the late 1960s, when our nation was grappling with a multitude of civil rights issues, U.S. Representative Edith Sterrett Green of Portland, Oregon, a former teacher, was shocked to find that there were no laws to prevent public schools from giving boys opportunities that girls didn't get. In other words, it was legal to discriminate based on sex. She was determined to change that, but she was up against congressmen who believed girls didn't need the same education or opportunities as boys. Here's a quote from Blumenthal's book about a high school girl who sued to be able to run on a boys cross-country team because there was no girls program. She was good and the coach was willing, but the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference prohibited boys and girls from competing together. In a 1971 ruling, a judge wrote, "Athletic competition builds character in our boys. We do not need that kind of character in our girls, the women of tomorrow." Actually, those kind of comments probably helped the cause more than hurt it. I know over the years I've heard from many men and women who have been grateful for the opportunities that opened up for their daughters. So through the efforts of Representative Green and others in the House, and Senator Birch Bayh, I think that's how you say it, of Indiana, Title IX was eventually passed. Blumenthal wrote, "Congress wanted girls to be able to take the same math classes as boys, to have a chance to become lawyers and doctors and PhDs. Before long, Title IX also came to mean that if schools sponsored sports for boys, they should sponsor them for girls too." When the book was published in 2005, Blumenthal noted that there were 3 million girls playing high school sports, up from only 294,000 in 1971 to 72. I found a great scholarly paper online, co-written by Dr. Jennifer Lee Hoffman, a WSU grad who went on to her master's and doctorate at UW. She is an associate professor in the UW Center for Leadership in Athletics. Written on the 20th anniversary of the lawsuit, she looked at gender equity in various athletic programs in the state. I love this summation about an immensely complicated subject. An athletics program is gender equitable when the men's sports program would be pleased to accept as its own the overall participation, opportunities, and resources currently allocated to the women's sports program, and vice versa. Hoffman and her co-authors also detailed how the state legislature authorized tuition waivers for achieving gender equity in athletics at four-year public institutions. They noted that not all state schools had at that point gender equitable programs, but at least there was a basis for figuring that out. Surely I must be coming to the end of this. Surely. Maybe. I don't know. Let me look. Let me just make sure. I think it is, yeah. The National Women's Law Center offers other facts and figures to consider. After Title IX passed in 1972, women's and girls' participation in sports skyrocketed. Before Title IX, fewer than 32,000 women participated in college sports, representing less than 16% of all college athletes. By 2019 to 20, that number was 222,920, 7 times the pre-Title IX rate, and representing 44% of all NC2A athletes. Similarly, a word I cannot say, in 1972, only 295,000 girls competed in high school sports, representing 7% of all high school athletes. But by 2018 to 19, that number had risen to 3.4 million, representing 43% of all high school athletes. The National Women's Law Center calls Title IX a real example of the field of dreams, that if you build it, they will come. They noted that while women are over half the undergraduates in our colleges and universities, female participation in intercollegiate sports just recently caught up to pre-Title IX male participation. And that's with women participating at nearly 5 times the pre-Title IX rate. My athletic career ended about the time Mount St. Helens blew, though I managed to run for fun for 6 or 7 years, and even walked a marathon when I was 47. To remember my glory years, I have some arthritic joints and a drawer full of ribbons and medals and more plaques than my son will want to deal with when I'm gone. I also see many more doors open for women in education, the trades, business, and politics. But there are miles to go here and around the world on so many fronts: science, health, agriculture. Giving half the population the same chances at education to help solve problems facing us has got to be a good thing. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about my small part in the ongoing wave of change. I do appreciate it. I keep saying that this is my last talk. This is the last talk I'm going to give, but I've already signed up for one more. After that, I may put all my notes in the bag with my racing spikes and lucky hair ribbons, or maybe I'll finally retire and organize all those papers and write a thesis. Who knows? Thank you again. Does anyone have questions?
If you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to ask them. Oh, we do have a question. Dave?
Whoa, look at that. My husband did remind me that the other day he said, you know, you're talking to Rotary, and I said, oh my God, I'm talking to Rotary. But he said that about the time I started in Yakima, he said Rotary didn't even let women in the door, which is, you know, and when I started my first job, the mayor of the town said I should put you up for Rotary. Because he thought that was pretty funny, because it was because everybody was 80 in his group, and he was not quite 80 at that point. But so anyway, I appreciate that Rotary is a lot different than it used to be, and I also, as I said to my friend Darcy, who came to see me today, Rotary does a heck of a lot of good stuff in Yakima, and I think that anytime you have all those different points of view, you get more ideas about how to help, what needs to be done. Anyway, there's one question. I made it. Okay. Is that it? I guess so. Excellent.
So thank you, Karen, for sharing your story. A lot has changed since you went to WSU, and I know my own daughter has had the opportunity to participate in cross country and tennis, and on a pretty much equal basis with the same coach as the boys. And all right. Well, okay, well, we do have another question. Nancy.
Who wear devices. I just wanted to share with you and also our guest, yesterday, a real step for girls in our city was the launching of Carol Finney's $237,000 endowment fund with Parker Youth and Sports for girls fast pitch at Eisenhower. Carol, that was yesterday. We will never call Carol, she's only a teacher again, because all those 33 years, I think we're almost the same running suit the whole time, but all she did, she never married, had no children, just went to school, worked for girls in sports, and she was a pioneer for the girls. She opened Ike's basketball team, track team, volleyball team, and softball team. First coach of all, and then she stayed with the fast pitch though. She loved that with her background with Yakima Wildcats or something like that. But anyway, the two girls that were there from the team took the press packet and they wanted to keep it. And they came up to ask permission, could we keep this? And I went, oh my gosh, who wants to keep a press packet? Sure. And they just had this look on this face like they were holding gold. It was a real, like they're valuable. And so that team will get, they got $9,500 yesterday. And in perpetuity, everything managed right, that's what will be their future.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. How many went to school at Eisenhower when Carol Finney was there? Yes, I remember Carol very well. And saw her later on while my daughter was playing volleyball. I saw her on the volleyball court. And then slow pitch for the girls almost until she passed away. She's an amazing lady. So, okay. Well, thank you, Karen, once again for bringing that message to us and reminding us of what's happened and kind of reminding us of the past, which wasn't very equal. On your behalf, Rotary is going to donate to Rotary International's Polio Plus campaign to eradicate polio, hopefully, in the world. Getting closer. Next week's program, and Bruce is going to correct me if I'm wrong, Bete Demiki? She, from Project Mercy in Ethiopia. We've been involved as a club in that area for a number of years, so we'll get an update on what's happening there, challenges that they have, successes that they've had. Also here at the Yakima Convention Center. Then on March 2nd, we're going to have something a little different. We're going to call it the Imagine Rotary Club Facilitated Discussion. So as a club, we have had the opportunity to fill out a survey, express our opinions, and on the 2nd, we're going to be able to speak about those, make comments, suggestions, talk about Rotary in the future, what changes we might want to make, what we're doing right, what we maybe aren't doing quite as well. So we just want to also look at it to use to maybe change our strategic plan as we go forward. 5 years ago, we had a similar exercise. COVID sort of got in the way, so we've gone back and looked at that and want to move forward with some new ideas, fresh ideas, as we imagine Rotary. So March 2nd, hope you'll all come. It'll be all contained here in our regular meeting. And after that, Regina Malveaux, if I say that correctly, Washington State Women's Commission, will be speaking also here at the Yakima Convention Center. And I think that is all. Thank you for attending Rotary. We'll see you next week.